This is a story about what could happen when a beautiful teacher crosses paths with a troubled high school kid. What begins as an innocent connection soon turns into a forbidden affair fueled by untamed passion and secrets. It is the story of how, when desire is left unchecked, there can be a devastating outcome that no one ever sees coming. Enjoy the story. The movie begins with Lila, a 38-year-old teacher, who is at a pivotal moment in her life. Recently divorced, she is on a quest for a new beginning and finding a sense of purpose. As she rides on a train and gazes at the passing world outside, her thoughts appear distant and sad. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Smith, a young man sitting in his dimly lit room, his face filled with worry and his mind heavy with thoughts. We then see Lila arrive at her new school and is warmly welcomed by the principal, who introduces her to the staff. She is soon given her schedule and informed about the class she will be teaching, which coincidentally includes Smith. Her first day in class is uneventful and almost forgettable, as Smith keeps to himself, staring at his desk and not participating in the lessons. Lila, who is still adjusting to her new role, does not find anything odd about his behavior. We are then introduced to Smith's world, which is one filled with tension at home. His parents are overprotective, as they are still haunted by the mistakes of his older brother, who is in jail for smuggling. They fear Smith might follow the same path, and in desperation, they keep moving him from one school to another, hoping for a change. However, Smith feels trapped, mostly misunderstood, and weary of their constant worry. One day, while boiling over with frustration, Smith sneaks out of the house and meets up with his friends as we see that he is already involved in the very activities his family fears. He starts running small errands in the drug trade also. But he was not doing it for himself. He was rather doing it in order to support his younger sister's education, as his parents cannot afford to give her the future she deserves. At school, Lila focuses on her responsibilities, paying little attention to Smith, who continues to blend into the background. After class one day, she is approached by Andrew, the school's salsa coach. He introduces himself to Lila and welcomes her warmly. Meanwhile, Smith and his friends gossip about their new teacher, and he tells them that he feels that she seems different from his previous teachers. That night, Lila calls her mom, as she was feeling lonely and needed to talk to a familiar voice. In the meantime, Smith returned home late, finding his mother anxiously waiting by the door. She pleads with him to cut ties with his troublesome friends, as she was worried for his safety. However, Smith feels she worries too much and lashes out at her before storming into his room and slamming the door shut. The next day, Smith hesitantly approaches Lila after class and asks for help with his essay. Lila's eyes light up, surprised at his request, but altogether pleased. She agrees to help and asks about the topic. Smith hesitates, and then mutters that it's personal. Sensing his discomfort, Lila tries to ease the tension, offering her help if he ever needs it. Smith simply nods and leaves. As Lila watches him walk away, she considers following him, worried he might be upset, but she is pulled aside by Shannon, her fellow teacher, who warns her not to waste time on students like Smith, calling it a lost cause. Undeterred by her suggestions, Lila tells her that every student deserves a chance. The next day, Lila reviews her students' files, hoping to learn more about Smith. She discovers that he has been expelled from multiple schools for fighting, and this only deepens her curiosity about the boy. So, she decides to hold a poetry session in class and encourages the students to express themselves. When it was Smith's turn, his words captivated the room. His poem is raw, touching, and deeply personal. This stirred emotions in Lila that she doesn't fully understand. After class, she stops him and tells him his poem was beautiful, encouraging him to share his feelings more often, as it might help him get along better. That evening, Lila returns home to find divorce papers waiting for her. Her ex-husband had already signed as part of the papers. Lila stared at them for a moment, feeling a familiar ache in her chest, before setting them aside. A few days later, Andrew invited her to dinner. Although Lila hesitated a little, she eventually agreed. So they went out for dinner, and as they talked, Lila heard a song she loves and invited Andrew for a dance. They danced and laughed, and for a moment, Lila allowed herself to relax. Unknown to both of them, Smith saw them from a distance, and his gaze lingered on his teacher as he watched her move gracefully across the floor. The next day, Lila noticed Smith sneaking out of school, and he only returned after classes for his private tutor with Lila. When Lila asked where he had gone to, Smith replied that he drank too much the previous night and that he was having a hangover. He was actually teasing Lila, who soon catches the joke as she tells him to keep the information between them. Smith agreed, and they continued their lesson for the day. That night, Lila received an unexpected visitor at her door. It was Smith, who was standing at her door with his face bruised. Alarmed, Lila pulled him inside and tended to his wounds. When she asked about what happened, Smith remained silent. Eventually he stood to leave, but she stopped him, informing him that it was already late. So, she decided to drop him off. As she drives, Lila asks Smith about his family, but Smith deflects her questions as he seems reluctant to answer her. As they continued the ride, it began to rain. So, Smith tells Lila to stop the car, and he steps into the downpour, turning to her with a mischievous grin and asks if she will teach him how to dance like she did at the bar. She hesitates, but eventually follows him out of the car as they both get drenched in the rain. But when Smith moved closer to her, Lila pulled away. She then insisted on getting him home immediately before things got out of hand. The next day, Lila avoided giving Smith much attention. Smith also noticed but decided not to comment. At home, his mother saw his improved grades and was very happy at the changes she was seeing in his son. She eventually approached Smith and tells him how proud she is with his improvement, but Smith played it down. He tells his mother that it was all thanks to his new teacher. So, his mother tells him that she would definitely take time out to thank the teacher next time she goes to the school. That night, Lila, still trying to get a grip over her life, went on another date with Andrew. He was charming, but his endless questions and self-absorbed stories soon became tiring for Lila's ears. Moments later, Lila excuses herself and goes to the restroom to have a moment to herself. Unknown to her, Smith was there too, watching her moves. When she stepped out of the restroom, Smith suddenly appeared, his eyes filled with longing and determination. Before she could say anything, Smith kissed her. Lila was both shocked and caught up in the moment, so she kissed him back. For a brief second, she let her emotions take over, but reality soon hit her. She quickly pulled away, as she suddenly felt guilt and fear. She tells him that it is wrong, and without another word, she returns to her seat. Now, totally uneasy, Lila excused herself once more, but this time, she went home. Feeling abandoned, Andrew now sits alone until Shannon notices him and approached him. She had been sensing Andrew's growing feelings for Lila, but longing to have him for herself. She began to plant doubt in his mind as she tells Andrew that she has always seen Smith with Lila. Meanwhile, Smith, unable to bear the unrest in his mind, goes to Lila's house. He knocks and repeatedly calls for Lila to let him inside. Reluctantly, Lila opened the door. She asks him what he was doing there, and Smith tells her that he needed to see her. He then tells her that he really likes her, up to the point of even loving her. Lila, still confused about the series of events, tries to stay composed. She then tells Smith that he needs to stay away from her. She further tells him that whatever this is, was not good for either of them. However, Smith continued to plead with her, but Lila insisted, explaining that being close to her would only bring him trouble. Despite her resolve, the emotions between them were undeniable. Eventually, they gave in to their feelings, and they spent the night together. By morning, Lila felt guilty all over again. She asked Smith to promise he wouldn't tell anyone about what had happened between them. Smith reluctantly agreed, his eyes tickling as he promised. At school, Lila sat in her class thinking, and also trying to hide her guilt over what had happened. However, Shannon approached her with news that she and Andrew were now dating. Lila congratulated her, even though her heart was heavy with other matters. In the meantime, Smith, who was in dire need of money, asked for help from his smuggler friends. Back at school, Andrew tries to mend his relationship with Lila, but Smith soon arrives and Lila excused herself to go with him for his private lessons. And this left Andrew burning with jealousy. Later in class, Smith surprised Lila with a gift, a delicate gold chain he bought with the borrowed money. Lila was touched by the gift, but her heart sank when Smith proposed to her. She didn't answer, simply smiling to avoid making things worse. When Smith leaned in to kiss her, she stopped him, reminding him that they needed to keep things normal at school. Despite the boundaries she tried to set, their relationship grew outside of school. They continued to spend more time together, laughing, eating, and talking about the future. One day, they decided to take a trip out of the city. During the trip, Smith opened up about his family, sharing the pain and struggles he had never voiced before. However, when Lila asked what he had been doing to get money, Smith avoided the question but instead confessed his love for her once more. But reality caught up with them. Upon returning home, Smith's smuggler friends confronted him about the money he owed. So they gave him an address to deliver goods. However, Smith, who was trying to leave this way of life behind, couldn't bring himself to tell them no, and he was forced to agree to their terms. One evening, Smith's mother stumbled upon photos of him and Lila on his phone. Unaware that Lila was the new teacher Smith was referring to, she was thrilled to see her son happy. But everything changed during a school meeting. As Lila hosted other parents of her students, Smith's mom saw her and immediately recognized her. Now furious at what she has just discovered, she confronts Lila. She didn't waste time in telling Lila that she was supposed to be a teacher and not someone encouraging her son to waste his time. Lila, who was initially confused, soon catches up and tries